Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. We're still dealing with accidentals today, and remember, an accidental is any note, usually a flat or a sharp, that's not written in the key signature, and sometimes that also includes naturals as well, but basically sharps and flats. And then remember, a sharp will raise a tone by a half a step. A flat will lower a tone by a half a step. So for example, if I do the G, because G is handy, B-A-G, and I want it sharp, that's one half step up. If I want a G and let's say if I want an A and I want it flatted, a flat lowers a note by half a tone. A sharp raises a note by a half a tone. And you get a lot of sharps and flats in music, and usually it's written in the key signature, but for an accidental, it's not written in the key signature, but it's something that you add as you're going along because it sounds better, because you like it better, the composer wants it that way. And so I wrote this piece, and I'm going to go over, I started to go over it last session, and we ran out of time. So if you look at this, you're going to see here is a 4/4 time. 4/4 means there are 4 beats to the measure, and a quarter note gets 1 beat. Quarter always stands for 4. 4 always stands for a quarter. If you take a piece of pie and you cut it in 4 pieces, just one line down, one line across, then what you've got are 4 pieces, and that's a fourth of the pie. So 4 stands for quarter. And I'm going to play this again, and I'm not going to play it very fast. But anytime you see that I've marked something, there's a natural, that is a half step that's in the key signature, so we don't have to change that. But some, like this is a G natural. I put it as a natural. It should have been a sharp. That's what I meant to put there. Anything that I put in, this is an F natural, this is an accidental because the key signature has it as an F sharp, but it's actually, I made it into a natural. That makes it an accidental because it's not written in the key signature. The key signature has all F sharp, but this is natural, and so therefore it's an accidental. Here's a natural, that's an accidental. Here's a natural, that's an accidental, and so forth. And this one I made a mistake on. It should have been a sharp. I just did it that way. So anyway, let me play this, and I'm going to play it slowly, and I want you to follow the music. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. That's how you would count it out in your mind. This is a dotted half. That means that's 3 beats, and your 4th beat is this 1 beat rest right here. And so it's 4 beats to a measure. Then we'll go into the accidentals, which are basically F naturals instead of F sharps. But I want to show you how to play that. Remember, this F is sharp. It's in the key signature, so that's sharp. This F is sharp. It's in the key signature, so it's sharp. This, I put a natural on it, so it becomes an accidental. It normally would be a sharp. I decided I wanted to have it natural, so I put it in the key signature. I put the natural sign before it. It's before the note. You put the sign before the note, and that's the note that you play. So at any rate, let's try this slowly, and we'll go over it. It's not a hard piece to play, so it's a good piece for people who are beginners because it shows them how to count the time, and it shows you how to play. If you know how to do it, you're being taught how to do it, what your sharps and flats are. So this is a song. want you to note the little dot on top of that note, that's a staccato note. Whenever you have a dot on the top of a note like this, that's called a staccato note. If it's a march, it's also called a stinger. That's just kind of what we call it. Don't forget to play the stinger. The stinger is a staccato note, and you cut the note off short. It doesn't mean that the whole song is going faster. It doesn't mean that you're playing that note faster. You're just cutting it off short. And a lot of marches are written that way. And so they just go to the end and boom, that's it. That's the end of it. So let's take a look at this now, and I'll show you what's going on here. This is an F sharp, so this is sharp. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and that's still sharp. It's in the key signature. Then I go to this E. This E is a dotted half. That's 3 beats. The reason it's 3 beats is because of that dot. A half note gets 2 beats, and then a dot means it gets half as much more than what it's worth to begin with. So half as much would be another quarter instead of instead of writing another quarter and then putting them together, which I could have done, I simply put a dot there. That means play half of that, and that would be 1 more beat, because a half note is 2 beats and half of that would be 1 beat. That makes this a 3-beat note. And the 4th beat is this 1 beat rest right here. And the same thing here, G, F, G, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and this goes to a D, and that's a half a beat, and it's another 3 beats. It's D, a half note with 2 beats, and then another half of that, which makes it 3 beats, and then the 4th beat is right here. It's another quarter note, and then D, E, F. Now that F is an accidental because the key signature says it's a sharp, but I don't want it to be a sharp. I want it to be a natural, because it sounds better in the music. And so therefore I put the natural sign in front of that F. It becomes a natural, and so therefore that's an accidental, because it's not the same as it's written in the key signature, which would have it be a sharp. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and here it happens again. It happens again right here. This is an F natural that in the key signature would say that it's a sharp. I have put that natural signal right here, and therefore that becomes an accidental because it's different than what it is in the key signature. 1, 2, 3, 4. A half a note gets 2 beats. Now, this goes back to being an F sharp again, because whenever you have an accidental, it goes for that measure, but it doesn't go beyond that measure. So this becomes a sharp. The only way that would become a natural is if, for some reason, this note was an F and I tied them together. But that's obviously not what I did. I wrote separate notes here. But if I had made an F and that was natural, and I tied it to this note, then this note would be the same as that, and it would be a natural. And you do get that in music, of course. But this is accidental, and it becomes a natural instead of a sharp. Then I have another note, and then this is going to go back to the F sharps, because it's going to be the same as what the key signature says. And then this one here is an accidental because it's different than the key signature. I have made it natural instead of the sharp, and then I go to D. Then this also becomes a sharp because it's a different measure, so it's going to be the same as the key signature. This F is also a sharp because it's the same as the key signature, and this is a sharp. E, 3 beats, 4, and this is a sharp. That's what I intended to write. I just didn't make the line long enough. I was in a hurry. But this would be an accidental. That's a G sharp, and then B, E, D, C, and that's another half a note that's dotted, half, which means it's 3 beats. Then I go C, C, B, A, 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1 beat, and the 8th note is a half of a quarter, so it's 1, 2, and 3, 4. That gets 2 beats, that gets 1 beat. This is 1, 2, and 3, 4. It's 1 beat, but I break it down into eighths, and you tongue both of them. And then here, D, A, C, B, 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, stinger. You know, shorten it. So let me play this and see if you can follow along. It's going to be basically all F sharps except where I put in the naturals and the G sharp here. That they will all be accidentals because they're different than the key signature, and they go for that one measure, but they don't go beyond that measure. You have to remark it again. Unless there's a hold, you have to remark it again. So even though this is an F natural, which is an accidental, since it's just for that measure, then this goes back to being the sharps again. So it only lasts for a measure, and this is going to be the same as this key signature, so they're going to be F sharps. This is going to be an F sharp. It agrees, you see, with these key signature. I wrote this as a march. It's in 4/4. A lot of marches are written in 2/2, but I did it this way because since I'm usually teaching beginning students, they learn how to count their time. I could always switch that time signature instead of from 4/4 to 2/2, but it's not in my purpose to do so. I want to have you be able to play this and play it slowly and then increase the speed. So as you increase the speed, it'll just be a faster 4 than 2/2, but it'll come out to be about the same as the 2/2 if I play it fast enough. So if you watch the music, then you can see where the accidentals are, and you can tell when I'm playing an F natural instead of an F sharp, it's going to sound a little different. And if I didn't put that natural in, and it would be sharp, but it wouldn't make the song be better. It needs to have that to be a natural, so therefore the accidentals come in very, very handy. So I'm going to play it slow again, watch the music, see if you can figure out the fingerings as you go, and I'll go over that with you when I'm finished. And that's it, the whole song. And so here's your G, and you finger it with, remember, B, A, G, F, E, D. G is like this. Then you have the F sharp like this. And that would be the E, and these two fingers go down for the E. And you notice that as I'm playing, I do not move these fingers because they're needed for all those notes. So I've got those fingers in place. I just keep them in place. I don't pick them up and put them down and pick them up and put them down. It's not necessary to do so. Then when we have to play the A, I do have to lift up that finger that I'm using for the G because it would be too much. So, but I keep these two don't move at all. Now there's your F. Right here, and I'm doing a natural F. Now this is a Baroque instrument, so when I'm playing that F, I add this little finger and it makes the pitch a little bit better. On these Baroque instruments, You see, it deepens the tone a little, it lowers the tones a little, it makes it a little more accurate. For the Baroque instrument, you can tell if you have a Baroque instrument. It looks exactly like a regular instrument, but there will be a little tiny B, usually on top of the thumb hole in the back. Just a very tiny one. You usually can't even pick it up on TV, but I look at it and here it is right there. That tells me it's a Baroque instrument. That also tells me that when I'm playing an F, I add this other little finger. I skip this, which would be an E, and play from the F and add that, and it just deepens the tone a little bit to make it more accurate. And if I didn't do that and I use the German fingering, you see it's a little bit too high pitched, so adding that finger deepens the tone and makes it more accurate. And then E, F, G. And then wherever I am here, right here, this goes back. This was an accidental. This is going back to the F sharp because it's in the key signature, and there's no sign that tells me I have to change it to a sharp or a flat or anything like that. Now, it's interesting here. Here's your G, here's your F. It's an accidental, it's a natural F because it's different than the key signature. So when I go from the G to the F, I do this, G, F. That's Baroque fingering for the F. If the German fingering was be like this, just add that. And to get the D, all I need to do is put down this middle finger. The fingers are already there. I don't have to. Now, for that high E, this is a G, F, E. And all I have to do to get that high E is to pull that thumb down a little bit. That's going to bounce that up by an octave. It doesn't work for every note, but it works for a lot of notes. So that works for that E. If I didn't do that, I would get the low E instead of the high E. Now, I also want to, that D right here, this is the G sharp, the B, the E, the high E. That D is just this finger, And you have to be careful because you can lose the instrument, it can fall. And then you put your finger down, and that gets you your C, which is the next note. There's D, and then C. That would be your next note. So here's the G sharp, the B, the E, the D, and the C. Let me finger them, and you look at, I have to look at the music, but you look at what I'm fingering. This is G sharp, B, and then this E right here with your half hole in the back for that E, and then that D is that one note, and then put your finger down for that C. Now, how do you balance it? When you've got that in your mouth for that C, for that D, you're not using any other fingers for the notes except that one. Even the thumb hole is uncovered. So the way that you do that, I put my little finger down here to help balance it, and my thumb my right thumb is on the back of the instrument. There's no special place where it has to be, but it's there, and that helps to balance it. And of course, it's in my mouth. That helps to balance it. But for the left hand, the only thing I'm doing is using that middle finger, and that's covering that one note, and the thumb is free. The tone hole in the back, the thumb hole is not being covered. And then I want the E, everything goes down with this half hold in the back. There's a D. So the fingering pattern gets a little bit tricky if you have, and you need to learn these fingering patterns. So I think what I'm doing now is I'm writing music that you can play that will help you to learn the fingering patterns. And so here we go, and I'm going to go over this again. G sharp, B, E, D, and C. So if you look at my fingers, and then I go to the A. Right here is the A. So I'm going from that C, and all I need to do for the A is put down this finger, because an A are those two fingers. So the C is already down for it, and all I have to do is add that top note. G, I'm right here, G, C, and lift that up for the D, and then everything down for the E, and half hold that and the thumb holding back. So if you want to get some practice in terms of playing the higher notes, play that D, you'd be surprised. It's a little tricky, but when you get used to it, it doesn't bother you. You just do it naturally. So in this measure, G, C, D, E. So that's G, I'll just figure it, G, and then C, and then D, and then E is everything down that you played for an E with a half holding in the back. The D does not have any thumb hole in the back. You lift that right off. But when you play that E, it's got to go back down again. So it's very important that your hand positions be right, because if not, you're going to miss the note. It's just a little bit on the tricky side. This is, if I'm playing, like this weekend, I played, I did a solo at a church, and I did Worthy is the Lamb That Was Slain from Handel's Messiah. Very tricky to play it anyway, but when I arranged it, I took the soprano part, and I took the alto part, and I melded them together so there wouldn't be gaps in what I was playing. Of course, I was using a recording tape as a background tape. So when it came to D, instead of doing this, which is kind of tricky and you can lose your instrument, I used the flute fingering for the D, and I just lifted that front fingering. That means my hands were on the instrument. I lifted that top finger. The thumb hole became closed. It stayed closed, and it wouldn't if I'd let that go for a regular D, and I hit that without any trouble at all. But the regular fingering for the D, for the recorder, that's the only finger down. And you have to balance it, the rest of it, by using your hand. In the right hand, you're not going to disturb the notes at all, because these aren't being used. Just to hold it in place, and then put it in your mouth, and that holds it. And your tone hole for that D is not covered for that, but you can put it down here, and that helps to balance it, because you got to put it somewhere. So what I do, but I wouldn't advise anyone to do it unless they really know what they're doing. You know what your instrument can do. You know what your instrument is capable of doing. I sometimes will use either made-up fingerings, or I will use fingerings that are typical of other instruments, since I play almost all of the woodwinds, and use and adapt it. And if the instrument can handle it, now this is like a Casio, kind of instrument. They're really very good instruments. And so what you do is you can, if it can handle it, you can alter your fingering somewhat. I do that when I do the Messiah anyway, and I do different fingerings that aren't even printed up. But I get all the notes that way. I get them in pitch, and it sounds good. So why not? So I think we're coming close to the end of time. I'm going to have to close it here, and I'm going to keep bringing up music that I have written myself to teach you note combinations and fingering combinations, so you will be able to learn how to play easily. So we'll close it here. Please join me next time, and I'll have some other music written for you.